Hey everyone, we're live. This is Brita and Ken here with the Firehose project. We're here to talk to you today. The topic of the day for our info session is a Q&A with Ken about emerging technologies. There's a lot moving quickly in development, and so we're going to chat about that. And Ken. So before we get started, I'm a student advisor here at the Firehose project. So I've chatted with a lot of you in the boot camp prep course or in the full program. And Ken here is our CTO and co-founder. So we're still sending some questions, so we're excited to answer those. If you have any questions as we go, you can submit those in the chat on the side, or you can send them into questions@thefirehoseproject.com. And I'll get back to you as quickly as I can, and we can chat about whatever questions you have about the program or programming, and we'd love to hear from you. So we'll start and we'll get into some of those questions, and then we'll go into a little bit about our Firehose program and kind of what you learn and coding in general and how we prepare you for a career as a developer. So we'll dive right in. And I guess let's just kind of start on a general kind of zoomed out sense. Like, what are some general trends that we're seeing with emerging technologies, and what are things that, like, in the landscape of development that are trends that are coming up kind of on a general level that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think now is a cooler time than ever to get involved with web development and building web applications. Because I feel like the pattern and the trend that we're seeing is user interfaces are becoming more and more reactive and responsive, and the JavaScript is playing a bigger and bigger role on the client side inside the browser to make things change and interact with you in a very fluid way. So I think in general, people are expecting more of a interactive and responsive type of interactions when they visit websites. So web developers are encouraged to constantly sort of focus on sort of really nailing the small things and making all of the entire application just have a really awesome experience. So I think that's one of the interesting trends. I think mobile is something that is kind of big. So thinking about building mobile first web applications potentially, and thinking about what's this going to look like on an iPhone, and taking into other considerations, like if you're on an iPhone or something, you probably don't have, you might not have a full Wi-Fi connection if you're going over sort of just the, if you're going over the data line. So basically you want to be able to optimize all your images and spend time getting the really small details to get file sizes down. So basically web applications can load on mobile. But I think those are two trends that I see that are both pretty exciting, being able to sort of engage in your with your application on a phone, as well as being able to sort of have a really slick user interface, and then really getting both of those, I think, is something that's pretty exciting. So those are a couple of trends that I'm kind of excited about.
Cool. And so what, I guess, like, getting a little bit more specific, what are some actual, like, technologies that you've seen that are emerging, whether it's like different frameworks or just getting like a little bit more granular, and whether they're related to those trends or not? Like, what have you been seeing recently?
Yeah, so I think one of the frameworks or technologies that I'm most excited about came out maybe like a couple years ago. It's called React. It's this pretty cool front-end framework that makes it easy to build these like super responsive and interactive sites. So I think specifically, I think React is pretty cool. I think the ideas behind the framework are even cooler than the specific framework itself. So if you don't know, React has been built by Facebook. So Facebook is kind of pushing people to use their JavaScript framework that allows you to sort of build applications and things like that. So personally, I think it makes it pretty easy to build some pretty like interactive sites and build it with organized code. Some of the other things that's interesting is React is pushing developers to use more functional programming ideas, which is traditionally more of an academic type thing, where like people in college and CS degrees think about like building things with functional programming ideas, and it's cool to see those type of ideas getting pulled into industry as well. So I think as far as the technologies go, I think React is something that's really cool, and I'm keeping my eye out on that, as well as the other frameworks too. But I think React, it's a really fun technology to work in, so it's something that I'm kind of excited about.
Cool. So a couple questions that we got from some students that sent them in. So thank you everybody who sent in questions. How do you decide which technologies to pay attention to and which to ignore?
Yeah, it's a tough question, and it's one that I feel like everybody treats a little bit differently. I think personally, I try not to think about the downside of giving something a shot. So I generally will try things really quickly and see if I like them and if they work for the use case that I'm currently working with. So I choose all the options out there, then I'll spend maybe like an hour or 2 hours working with the different options. I'll ask myself which one do I enjoy using the most, which is the right tool for the job, and then I'll just pick that and I'll go with it. As with anything though, there's oftentimes that there's many different tools that you could use and you have to pick one, but there's not like necessarily a right one. So at that point, I just kind of sometimes will just choose the one that I feel like, hey, I think this is the best, but like you never know 100% if you're making the right decision, but you can always change your mind later. You're not making like a life commitment to any technology or any particular tool. So I would encourage people to not worry about it too much, but also do your research, maybe do a little bit of experimenting, see if you like working with a particular technology before committing to it. But even if you do commit to it, you can always change and do something else later. So it's not like a life-changing decision. So I think I would suggest not worrying about it too much, but just making the decision to actually like pick something up and actually start learning.
Cool. So that kind of gets into some of the next question, but so you mentioned like trying it out, seeing if you like it, seeing if it's the right tool for the job, obviously. But do you know, one of the questions that we got is, do you know from experience, like which things are likely important and which are not? So do you have any like criteria that you're looking for, whether it's, I don't know, I mean, you can get into that, but like, are there specific criteria or aspects that you're kind of like looking out for, keeping an eye out for, evaluating when you're looking at new technologies that you're trying out or reading about or anything?
Oh, gotcha. So when I'm evaluating different technologies and things like that, I try not to, I try to put myself in sort of like the present tense as opposed to trying to look too much into the future. If you try to look into the future and predict what is going to end up being successful and sort of like kind of like get ahead of the curve and sort of like try to be on like the bleeding edge, a lot of times you'll end up committing to stuff that doesn't make sense. So it's important to, when evaluating these things, to not put too much weight into, I think this is going to be the next big trend, like let's see if that is, and instead be like, is this the right tool for the job in like 2017? Will I regret doing this? Am I determining, is my decision of this technology based on some hopeful things that I have? Well, if that's the case, you run the risk of sort of never actually picking the right tool for the job. So I would encourage you to sort of evaluate your options, but don't try to look too much into the future. Use the right tool for the job. If you find a programming language or a framework or something like that that you think will actually make your life easier, go for it, pick it up. But don't commit to something just because you think there's a chance that it takes off, because it might not. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Cool. Do you think that varies by, like all of this that we've been kind of talking about and trying out new things, do you think that varies by kind of the field that you're in? So whether you're looking at like very specifically for front-end development versus back-end or full stack, or like machine learning or things like that? Or do you think that's kind of like a broad way to experiment and test things out and like evaluate different technologies across the board?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would point out is a lot of these different disciplines that you have, like front-end, back-end, machine learning and stuff like that, have a common ground in the fundamentals of programming and sort of being able to model problems and break apart problems into problems that can be solved by computers. So I think the general sense of understanding how code works and how to think about that stuff is something that transcends maybe the individual disciplines that you have. But I think in the process of actually building out stuff and experimenting on the front end and the back end and seeing all those things, I feel like it's pretty easy to find what you feel makes you the most excited to work on. And if you find yourself constantly gravitating towards one part of a web application, if you're always working on like the front end and the user interface and how things look, well, maybe you should focus more of your energy on front end development because that's what you enjoy. And the same is true if you're less interested in the visual stuff, but you like to sort of think about like, okay, if there's databases, how is that going to be connected and all of that stuff. Maybe getting things pixel perfect and moving things around is a little bit like not as interesting to you. So I think the important thing is to get some of a foundation, start to experiment in the different various disciplines, find what works for you, and then when you find something that you truly enjoy doing, do that. And if you're doing something you genuinely enjoy, you're going to find it a lot easier to commit the time to code and practice and learn. And it's also going to make it so when you're potentially interviewing for a position, people can sense the passion that you have about the technology and the code, as opposed to just following along but not really being excited about it. So keep your eyes open to all the possibilities, but at the same time figure out what makes you the most excited and then go for that.
Cool. So that might segue a little bit into the next question, but with everything kind of moving so fast and like new technologies emerging and there are always like new frameworks that people are getting excited about, what do you think will kind of stay the same, or what like general themes will continue?
Yeah, so I think, well, people have been programming for such a long time. Things are moving really quickly and there's constantly new technologies and frameworks and the internet's changing stuff and things are happening really quickly, but it doesn't change the fact that people have been programming for like over 30 years and actually like even way farther beyond that. And a lot of stuff actually hasn't changed that much. So I've talked about this a few times, but there's this book that was written in the 70s called The Mythical Man Month that talks about the idea of programming and sort of breaking apart problems and building teams of programmers and having people work together, and it breaks into some of the ways that teams can build stuff. And that stuff is still true today. Like the fact is you can't add an extra developer to a team and expect to get 2x the code written. There's communication overhead and there's things involved in that. So as far as working together with other people to solve technical problems, not really that much has changed. The same thing is true with like agile teams and things like that. When you're working on a team, it's probably going to be structured in one of the ways that just works for people in industry, and it has worked for a long time. So I would encourage you to think about that. Like, well, work on a team and get experience working with other people, and things like code reviews. Like maybe the specific code and the technology and the actual lines of code that you're writing are going to be a little bit different, but it doesn't change the fact that a code review is like a useful skill to be able to both give and receive and sort of be able to think about. So there's things like that. And then I think the other thing that you want to think about is the foundational type stuff of programming kind of transcends the test of time. So breaking apart one problem, transforming one data type into another data type, the type of stuff that you see commonly on interviews. And the reason that people are really interested in some of these things is because these types of things make you really adaptable. So as everything's changing around you, if you have the foundation of the stuff that doesn't change around a lot, you end up in a good spot, because anything that the community or programmers throw at you, you're able to react with. So focusing on the fundamentals and the things that don't change is something that definitely makes a lot of sense, especially if you're just starting out.
Yeah, totally. And that's why I think, you know, we obviously structure a lot of our full program around is focusing on those computer science fundamentals, like on object-oriented programming and writing tests into your code and giving you the experience of actually working on a team for 8 weeks, building out a more complex project. And then with our advanced courses, which we'll talk about all of this in a few minutes, but we have some more of the kind of like new technologies. We have React, we have, you know, we're launching some new exciting ones with Angular 4 and a bunch of other things. So I think that's what, you know, just kind of to echo what you're saying, like our course is really built around that and like preparing you to give you the solid foundations that are equipped to, you know, like go through the process of kind of those first questions that we were talking about, and like evaluating and trying things on and stuff as they come out. That kind of got to my next and last question that we have here, was just like how to stay relevant and stay sharp with everything going on around you. And I think, you know, you've kind of summed that up already with the answers to the previous questions of just having a solid foundation and, you know, trying things out, not ruling anything out for any reason, seeing what's the best tool is for the job. So.
Yeah, the only thing I might add on top of that, I think everything that Rita said is spot on. The only other tip that I potentially have, besides the stuff that I've already talked about, is to do it consistently. So instead of trying to sort of like cram it into a small period of time where you just do all of the stuff, being consistent about it and coding every single day and working on coding challenges and like continuing to sort of stretch your skill and sort of go to the next level. If you take a long break or something like that, it can potentially be problematic to sort of like have to pick up the skill again. So keep yourself fresh, keep working on programming, continue to program every single day, and make sure that you're making progress on the skill as you go. But as you're doing that, you should be focusing on things like the fundamentals and the things that don't change around, and things that will last the test of time, things like working on a team and stuff like that. But yeah, just doing it and putting in the work is just so important. So that's important too.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Ken, for joining us. If you have any other questions, definitely send them into questions@thefirehoseproject.com. If you have questions for Ken about, you know, new technologies, what his thoughts are, his experience, or questions about our program in general, we're always happy to chat, hop on the phone, talk a little bit further, talk about your coding goals, whatever. So hopefully that was helpful and interesting. I think I'm really excited to kind of share how we approach a bunch of those things with our full program, both with more of the fundamentals as well as our new advanced courses, which kind of give you the opportunity in a Firehose quality lesson to explore all of these new technologies as well. So kind of taking it back a lot, because I know a lot of people that are joining are going through the bootcamp prep course and are kind of looking at the program and thinking about just getting into a coding career. And so thinking about kind of to take it back before we launch into our program, why coding is important and relevant, why it might be something that you want to explore. And so we talk about this early in the bootcamp prep course, but the concept and the phrase actually that was said that software is eating the world and that, you know, programming is kind of taking over. And so I think that's more relevant now than ever. You know, as Ken said, people have been programming for a while, and it's just getting more and more common that all companies across all different industries are looking to automate things and make things more efficient. And, you know, almost every company now has some type of interactive website. And so that's what we're teaching with full stack web development, how to make websites like Yelp or like Google Maps or, you know, Instagram on a browser, interactive websites where you can do things like log in, have user authentication, upload. So if you start thinking about all these things that you do online all the time, that's what we're solving for and what we're teaching. And those are the types of things that those opportunities and demand for those jobs is only increasing. So, you know, from web apps to things like SpaceX and all the projects that Tesla is working on, autonomous cars, all of that is also requiring programming. And so as these technologies continue to evolve and they get more and more complex, getting in now and starting to learn that really solid fundamental and getting a great foundation is going to allow you to be kind of on the cutting edge and just explore all of these new technologies as they're emerging. And so that's kind of looking at like the landscape of programming in that career, and then looking at like, you know, day to day in this job, why somebody might want to do it. So it's a really actually creative job. So you're constantly problem solving and working on puzzles and critical thinking, and really just like addressing challenges and problems with code. So as you're coding, you're taking an opportunity or a problem and you're breaking that down, and you're, you know, instructing a computer how to work with different data and interaction and stuff like that. And so you're constantly like problem solving and creating programs that people are actually using. And so you get to see that impact very quickly as well. So it's a really fulfilling career type, and definitely like every day you're working on something different, you're learning something new every day. And so a lot of people looking to transition into a coding career, that's what they're really passionate about, is that learning and creation. And so we've definitely seen that among our students that have created awesome apps and programs and businesses after the program. And we're always just kind of blown away by the creative businesses and ventures that they're coming up with. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, kind of learning those skills, there's so many different ways to do it. So, there are a lot of free online resources, and then kind of on the other end of the spectrum, there's a much longer, not free by any means, CS degree. And then we have coding boot camps. And so the Firehose project is an online coding boot camp. And so we have a 22 or a 42-week program that teaches full stack web development. And so a lot of the things that Ken was just talking about teaching those fundamentals, are really what we focus on in our program. So we teach Ruby on Rails as well as JavaScript, but we have a really strong focus on the fundamentals that I mentioned, so like object-oriented programming, working with algorithms and data structures, writing tests into your code. And so all of these concepts we're teaching you as you're building out apps from scratch, from end to end. And then the final 8 weeks of the program, you get to work on an agile team project, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And so as you're learning all that in this online kind of environment, it's obviously a bit different than most traditional schooling that students have. And so I think, a lot of education is looking towards online right now because there are a ton of benefits of learning online. So if you think about kind of more traditional education, you've got this like old school lecture type where you've got one instructor in a classroom full of students, and you aren't getting super personalized attention in class, and you're kind of stuck at the pace of the course, at the pace of the classroom. So if you've got, if you're kind of doing really well and you're excelling and this is like your strong suit, you're not going to be able to move ahead, and you're going to be kind of held back, and eventually you're going to get bored, and it's not going to be the right pace for you. And similarly, if you're struggling, if you have questions, it's going to be really tricky to get that kind of attention that you need. So in an online course, you're able to move more at your own pace. So for our program, so for example, the 22-week program, students put in about 25 to 35 hours per week. And in the 42-week program, it's about 12 to 15 hours per week. And when you put in those hours, so when it fits your schedule is totally up to you. And we'll give you kind of weekly goals and timelines, which we'll show you in a preview of the lessons shortly, to help you stay on track. But ultimately, you can move at your own pace. So if you need to take a little bit more time to review or practice one concept, you can do that. And in addition, we have a lot of support built in. So we always can kind of provide the right content at the right time. And I think the best way that we're able to do that is actually because we started by teaching in-person courses. So we started instructing at a bunch of different places, and we taught kind of intensive Firehose boot camps at places like Harvard and Babson, Brown, Carnegie Mellon, RISD. And we got a really quick feedback loop on how students learn these concepts, where they get confused, how to best explain things, and what content to provide at the right time. So as you're moving through an online program, we're able to say, okay, now that you've gotten to this point and completed that challenge, this content is what's going to help kind of tie all that up and help you move on. And similarly, we're able to, point out like common gotchas and areas where students usually get tripped up and really help you navigate through those. So I think you get a much more personalized and individualized experience moving through an online course, with still the support and the community of the Firehose students and team and mentors, which we'll talk about as well. And so I think, that's also one of the biggest benefits is just this diverse community. So we have students from all over the world that have all different backgrounds. We have students that are stay-at-home parents. We have students that have worked in IT, students that have been, more admin roles. And then we also have students that are product managers or have worked in development and need a refresher. And we have students from companies like Google and Adobe that have put employees through the program to level up their skills and really continue being really high impact employees. So there's a really diverse group of students in the Firehose community, and that's something that you'll be able to interact in the team project and in office hours, and you'll see students, coding on the same lessons as you, and you can reach out to them in Slack. And all students are constantly posting in the community page, sharing blog posts, sharing their experiences. So we have a really tight-knit kind of interactive community as well of students and alumni all over the world. So as you're coding through and you've got the community, and then you've also got a whole bunch of support so that you never feel like you're coding alone and you're never kind of stuck or isolated with your wheels spinning, not sure how to move forward. So the first way that we address that in our program to make sure that you're going to not get stuck, not get too frustrated, and always continue learning and progressing is through the forum at the bottom of each lesson. So for those of you who have started the bootcamp prep course, which most of you have, you'll see the forum at the bottom of the lesson, and that's a great way to copy and paste your code or take a screenshot and get a quick answer, quick help from a Firehose engineer or ambassador. And that's the best place to go for technical help to make sure that you're not stuck spinning your wheels. And it's a great format for that because you can go back and look at other questions and really get that technical help when you need it at the time of need in that lesson. And then, of course, one of the greatest parts of kind of support in our program is that mentorship. And it's an amazing opportunity because as someone who's learning how to code, you'll get matched with someone who's a senior developer and has years of experience. And you'll meet with them regularly and be able to discuss challenging topics, go over challenges in the course, pair program with them. So that's something that you'll do a lot in a first developer job and throughout your career, is working with your peers and with your team to pair program and tackle challenges. And so learning how to do that from the get-go and really benefiting from that experience is a huge part. And so we match students with mentors based on kind of coding background, coding goals, and we'll personally match you with a mentor that's going to bring the most to the table and really help you progress each week and help you get to your goals. And so you'll meet with the same mentor the whole time and really develop that kind of mentor-mentee relationship with a senior developer. And so that's a huge part of what helps our students really level up and keep continuing up that learning curve each week. So a couple other things, that we do also have weekly office hours. So Ken, who was just here, and then Marco host office hours each week. And that's a time where you can basically call in and meet other students, ask your questions, hear their questions, and just kind of hear other students' experiences and put faces to names. And students get a lot out of those office hours. They're always really helpful, just kind of talking about things, even if it's not exactly the part of the lesson that you're on at that point. Being exposed to all of that and hearing how other students are challenged with that or working through that is a really cool opportunity. We always do, those are held live, but we always do record those and send them out, so you can always check those out if you're not able to make the live office hours. And then, as Ken was mentioning, the code review is a huge part of our program as well, and a huge part of what really helps you prepare for a role as a developer and continue really honing in on your skills and improving your code. And so, as you would see in the bootcamp prep course, when you submit a challenge, you'll get some great feedback, or you'll get the thumbs up from us. Same thing as you're going through the full program. You're going to be getting consistent code reviews that are showing you, what you can tweak about your code to make it better, how you can work to, refactor your code, make it more efficient. And so that's a great part, that every time you're working on these projects and submitting your code, you're getting really great constructive feedback and actionable feedback. And then as you're able to implement that and have those kind of aha moments and take that knowledge forward, it helps you progress each time that you're going back to code and really use that knowledge that you're gaining. And then, as I mentioned, we also have the Slack and the community, and so students are always chatting in there. And then kind of the final bit of community and support that we also have is the team project itself. So working and meeting regularly with a team of Firehose students. We'll have a Firehose mentor that's going to act as your team lead. And so what that whole team project does, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but is give you, really simulate that dev team environment. So you're going to be getting more code review. You're going to be having opportunities to chat with other students, talk about your code, talk about what you've been doing each week in a stand-up environment that really simulates what it's like to work on a dev team and to work through those sprint schedules and take more complex tasks and projects and break them down into actionable items and coordinate that among a team. So those are kind of what we focus on with our teaching style and our support and kind of how we structure the whole program. And so now kind of doing a deep dive and looking more into our actual program and curriculum. And before I get too into that, you are able to preview the full program and actually look at each of the projects that you'll be working on. So if you're in the bootcamp prep course and you look up at the top of the screen, you'll see it says preview full program. And if you give that a click, you'll be able to actually look at all the projects that you'll be working on, as well as our job prep lessons. And so we'll go into that a bit as well. So I won't go too into detail on the actual apps and features that you'll be building out because you can preview all those. But basically, we start our students off in the bootcamp prep course. And the bootcamp prep course is designed, it has a couple different purposes. So definitely to give you, as a potential student, a preview into our program. So we want you to know how we set it up, how we offer support, how we offer code reviews, and make sure it's a good program for you and that it's going to fit your goals. And that's really important to us because we want, it's a big time investment and a big decision to decide to change your career and start coding. And it needs to be the right fit for you. And then the bootcamp prep course also kind of acts as our admissions process. So as you're working through the bootcamp prep course, you will be able to create your custom portfolio page, so working with some HTML and CSS, and then you'll launch right into writing some Ruby code. And so you'll set up, your coding environment, and you'll start writing Ruby programs, and there'll be 3 challenges. And as you submit those challenges, we'll be giving you the feedback through code reviews, and then once you get the thumbs up on all those, we can officially accept you into our program and invite you to join the full course. And so we start students every Monday. So there's kind of rolling admissions in that sense, where you're able to pick any Monday that still has spots open as your start date. And then we can get you started in the full program. And so the full program ramps up really quickly. You're going to start right in with diving into Ruby on Rails and building out an app in the first week. That's a database-powered quotes generator. So already working with data structures, with back-end, front-end, full-stack development, and launching that live online after your first week. And so as we mentioned, we're focusing a lot on these computer science fundamentals, test-driven development. We're also teaching wireframing, how to really take it from end to end in development, and really to learn by building these real web applications from day one. And so we're starting you off and you're building all of these. We're teaching you how to do it, and as we're going through the curriculum and building the apps, we're kind of slowly removing these training wheels, and through repetition, teaching you how to be more self-sufficient and answer your own questions and look up solutions and really try a bunch of things. Of course, knowing that you always have support and you always have guidance from your mentor as well in the Firehose community. And so as you're going through and you're learning all these concepts, you'll complete kind of the core curriculum, and then you'll have the option to join this Agile team project. And so as Ken mentioned, that's one of the things that is so core to getting a job as a developer and being a really Agile developer is working with a team is something that is not going to change. So having, all the best products are built by teams. And so if you think of, any of the web apps that you build, there's big development teams that are working on different pieces even of the same product. And so as looking into a transition into a developer career, you're going to need to know how to work on a team, how to communicate, how to coordinate your timelines and projects and stuff. So that team project is a huge part of what helps get our students jobs and what really prepares them and gives them the confidence to go out and apply for roles on dev teams. And so I think that's a really big part of the program. And so now that we've kind of talked about those big components of the full program, we'll go ahead and switch and give you a little preview just of what our program looks like and how we kind of set up the lessons. So like I was saying, anybody who's kind of started the bootcamp prep course will have a preview for that. But we'll go through and just poke around some of the lessons real quickly. So here we go, get this. The full screen. So this is the full program dashboard. And so you can see it's somewhat similar to the bootcamp prep course. And so these are the different lesson tracks. And as I mentioned, they're all oriented around building your own apps. So they're very hands-on, learn by doing. So here's, we have, this was the first one that I was mentioning, a database-powered quotes generator. And then here we have building out a Yelp clone. So this is using features like a Google Maps API, user login, user authentication, image uploading. So if you think of using Yelp, where you can, upload an image and leave a comment and geolocate, the comment or the features on there. So let's take a look at what some of those lessons look like. So this is just kind of a random lesson in that track. So this is changing a rating to a drop down. So we give you a little overview. So basically this is how to rate things that are on this Yelp clone. So students have done really creative projects. So we've had students that have had, the best bakery or the best restaurants. Then we've also had students that have done the best climbing locations in their area. So how to, compile a bunch of rock climbing areas and rate those. And so this is teaching you how to build a certain feature that's a pre-populated drop-down for a rating. And so you'll see we have kind of a text-based curriculum similar to the bootcamp prep course. And the reason why we do that is, as a developer, you're going to be getting written instruction and written documentation for new projects and working with new APIs. And it's helpful to get used to working with that. Additionally, you do get lifetime access to all the current curriculum, so that this acts as a living resource for you after the program as you go back and review the lessons that you've worked on. So we have common gotchas, and then, as I mentioned, at the bottom of each lesson, we have a forum. So these are all forum questions that students have sent in, and this is where you can ask your own questions and get a quick answer from a Firehose developer or ambassador. And so as you're working through the lessons, we're also going to have challenges built in here. And so the challenges are basically a time to take what you're learning and really apply it on your own. And so they're definitely challenging, of course, and they're meant to be pretty hard. And so you're going to work through these, and we have different challenges that will ask you to do certain things. And so those are ways that you can really take what you're learning and what we're kind of walking you through a bit, and then put those into, apply those and test your knowledge. And as we're going through the lessons, you'll see this talking about completing videos. And so we do also have videos in addition to the text-based lessons that are going to give you kind of more overviews on larger concepts and really help you kind of tie together bigger picture and move on. And so we have videos for things like object-oriented programming, and those are these are, again, these like foundational topics. And so we do have kind of different curriculum formats to make sure that these things are really sinking in and helping you move on kind of to the next level. So this is what the curriculum will look like for our technical lessons as you're working through the tracks. We do also have a job prep section. So this is our Firehose job prep, and so you'll get access to this further on in the curriculum as you're nearing the end of the lesson. And these were lessons that are built out with a lot of feedback from technical recruiters and hiring managers, and they take you all the way from the beginning of the job search to even salary negotiation in day one. So we start with like how to structure your job search so you're being really efficient and effective. And then what to expect, so optimizing your applications. Let's take a look at some of these where I just was, and you'll see there, so we have a ton of really actionable lessons. So from working on your resume to the steps of an interview. We have interview 101 here, things that you need to know, things to get comfortable with, things to practice. So we have some examples. And then we have interview mistakes. So a couple of these we can give you, for example, a hint. So some of these we also focus on like soft skills. So for example, how to talk about yourself as a developer. Nobody wants to hire an aspiring developer or someone that says, I want to be a developer one day. You have skills, you can show them and be confident in that. And it's a lot about how you position your experience and how you talk about yourself. So we give you all of these different tips throughout here. We break down whiteboarding. I think that's something that people can sometimes be intimidated by if they haven't done technical interviews. Best practices, pro tips, all of that. So these are something, again, that you'll have lifetime access to these current lessons, and it's a huge beneficial resource as you're going on even to your second job as a developer after the program. And so you'll always be able to come back to these and kind of review and brush up. And then finally, one thing that we mention and that is related to our topic of the day are these advanced courses. And so this is relatively new, and we have launched a whole bunch of advanced topics. We're constantly coming up with new curriculum based on feedback and what kind of the new interesting technologies are. So you'll see we have ES6, we have React, algorithm refactoring, and we're launching new ones. So the newest one that is coming soon is Angular 4, and stay tuned for additional topics there. This is a monthly subscription model, and so this is designed to be more almost like a Firehose grad program. So these are things that after you've graduated and you're either looking for a job or maybe you're in your first job and you want to stay sharp and keep learning. And a lot of what Ken was talking about, just really giving things a try and testing them out and seeing what feels like is interesting and useful for the work that you're doing and interested in. And this basically is a way to present that to you and give you all of that opportunity to test out these new frameworks and new technologies. So with that, I will join you again and kind of go over what we discussed today, and then definitely, like I said, feel free to send in any other questions. So I think going back to our Firehose program and kind of recapping there, like what Firehose focuses on, what sets us apart, what what we really think is valuable. So I think the biggest one is the depth of the curriculum, giving you a really strong foundation to be a self-sufficient developer, teaching you how to fish, how to go out there and keep learning and keep progressing and evolving as technology is evolving. So those fundamentals, working with algorithms, and really teaching you the things that don't change, as well as how to explore and learn the things that are changing so quickly. Then the Agile Team Project is a huge part. That's something that I think is really, really valuable to get as you're learning, and that is hard to get if you're not joining a boot camp that has that experience. So we focus a lot on that and on making that a really good experience where you're building out this complex app for 8 weeks, working with a team, meeting regularly, and really learning how to communicate and coordinate with a remote dev team. And then our coordinated support and our community of students are really what kind of take all of that to the next level and make it a great program to be in, where you never feel like you're coding alone or isolated or not getting the help that you need. So whether that's through the forum or office hours, meeting with your mentor, meeting with your team, chatting with students in Slack or the community channel, that's one of the best parts of our program, and that's what we hear really from other students is once they've been in the program for a while. That's kind of hard to convey before you join, but just our amazing community of Firehose students that are on our platform, Firehose alumni that are still engaged and chatting with us all the time. And that's what we're definitely, makes us the happiest every day and are the most stoked for, is just this awesome, diverse background of all the students that are joining us. So that being said, thank you for joining us today for the info session and chatting with Ken about emerging technologies. We love kind of talking about new topics. If you have any questions or requests for the next topics, definitely shoot us an email, questions@thefirehoseproject.com, and we'd love to get back to you, hear your questions, and chat with you further. And so I hope everyone has a great evening, and we'll see you soon. Bye.